Hi, everyone. This is Jillian from Jewish Workshops and AISH Webinars, and it is a pleasure to be on the line joining all of you today. We are extremely privileged to have Sarah Chana Radcliffe with us. Before we get started, I'd love to see who's joining us and where you're from. So please go on to your chat box and write your first name or your initials and where you're joining us from so I can welcome you. I also have to give a huge shout out to the Family Circle members. Everyone who's part of Sarah Chana's community is also with us today. So if you're a community member already, I'd love to see that too. You can just go ahead and write member next to your name, and I will welcome you as well. So welcome Sender from Cleveland, Melanie from Toronto, Pearl from New York, welcome Lawrence from Connecticut, Jennifer from Toronto, Kelly from Canada, GS from Muncie, Angelica from Kansas, Rachel from Baltimore, Chaya Sarah from Jerusalem, welcome JC from Johannesburg, and Safi from Jerusalem, LA from New Jersey, Leah from Miami Beach, Suri from Muncie, welcome, Simcha from Beit Shemesh, and Yosef from Manhattan, Chaya from Detroit, DF from Detroit, Bianca from South Africa, Sarah from New York City, Sarah from LA, Esty from Brooklyn, Deborah from Brooklyn, Leah from Toronto. My goodness, we've got lots of people here on the line, and it is wonderful to see everyone here. Let me get to a few more people. Welcome Menachem from New York, and Ellen from Thornhill, Tova from Yerushalayim. Welcome. Bati from Cleveland, April from Toronto, Panina from Muncie, Lisa from Chicago, BL from St. Louis, and you're a member of the community. Welcome. Nice to see you here. Henny from Muncie, also a member of our family circle. Welcome. Shira from Boca, Ayala from New York, PS from Los Angeles, Steve from Birmingham, Elizabeth from New York, Jessica from Hewlett, Leah from Muncie. Welcome, welcome to all. This is really wonderful to see so many people joining us today. We have hundreds on the line right now, and I can see that just in the last minute or so, 100 more people joined, which is unbelievable. Thank God we have almost 3,000 signups for today's class, so we are likely to hit capacity. Please don't leave in the middle. I don't want you to get locked out. We have so much to cover, and we will be getting to as many questions as possible. So please just hang in there and stay on the line for the duration of the class today. I see so many more people. I just have to say hello quickly. Mara from Toronto and Jody from Toronto. Welcome. Michelle from North Woodmere. CP from Dallas. Christine from Toronto. Elizabeth from Queens. Leah from Boston. Batsheva from Lakewood. Lois from Toronto. Aviva from Portland, Oregon. Welcome, welcome. Chana from Switzerland. Fabian from New York. Anna from Minnesota. This is unbelievable. Okay, over the past 3 years, Sarah Chana has brought her expertise in parenting and relationships to our Jewish Workshops community, and we have received countless emails and phone calls from our members expressing their heartfelt appreciation and enthusiasm for Sarah Chana's guidance and knowledge. And with that gratitude came request after request to learn more from Sarah Chana and delve deeper into some difficult issues that plague our lives and our children's in ways we never knew. So today, Sarah Chana is going to introduce her unique insights and perspective on the skill of discipline, when it's needed, why it's needed, and how to apply it to bring out the best in ourselves and our children. So again, make sure to stay on the line until the very end to hear about this one-time chance to join Sarah Chana week after week for a full live online program at a special discounted rate for all attendees today. Plus, as I mentioned, we've had hundreds of questions come in ahead of time, and we'll get to as many live on the line as possible. Please feel free to use this question box that you've been putting your names into to put in questions as well throughout the class, and we will get to as many as possible. It is truly an honor to be hosting Sarah Chana today. A registered member of the College of Psychologists of Ontario, Sarah Chana Radcliffe has been practicing marriage, parenting, and individual counseling for over 40 years. Sarah Chana is a well-sought-after lecturer on stress management, parenting, anger management, and emotional well-being. She is the author of Raise Your Kids Without Raising Your Voice, The Fear Fix, Make Yourself at Home, and 5 other books on family life and emotional well-being. Chana, we are so grateful that you're here with us today. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic over to you. How is everything?
Everything is very good. I'm so happy to be here with everybody today on one of my favorite topics, discipline.
Great.
Yes. All right. Are we ready to begin then?
We are. Let's get going.
Okay. I mean, it might sound funny actually to hear discipline being anybody's favorite topic, and we'll explain why as we go through. Let's talk about what discipline is, first of all, and why it usually isn't anybody's favorite topic. I think of the word as implying some level of control. Discipline refers to something that will end up with a self-control. Maybe it's imposed outwardly at first, and then it leads to self-control. The ability to say no, to put limits on something, to stop ourselves. When we are self-disciplined, we can say no to ourselves. And when we can discipline children, we can say no to children, and no has a way of creating healthy, safe, protective boundaries. So that is something that we might use the word discipline to mean. Limits, not engaging in excessive anything, like putting that boundary, that ending, that limit on something. So being appropriate, being safe, being healthy, because we're operating within a safe or healthy or appropriate limit. Okay, we're going to actually look at how this corresponds to real behavior in real life, in home, in the kitchen, and so on. But these are general definitions, starting ideas. A student, you know, is a disciple, and the word discipline has something to do with learning. And taking, to be a disciple of somebody means you are following in their teachings, and there's a teaching learning aspect to discipline. And this comes up again when we look at an area of study, like the discipline of psychology, for example, where something has been constricted and it's an area of focus. So always with discipline, instead of like everything goes, it's something like a limit, a constraint for some very good reason. It also suggests orderly, as in a well-disciplined, properly functioning environment. So there's something about these limits that facilitate a high level of functionality. Now, the word limit itself, maybe we need to clarify a little bit more too. Like I said before, not engaging in excess, not overdoing something, putting a limit on it. That again makes us and our children appropriate, safe, and healthy. A respect for boundaries between people or within time and space, right? A holding back, a general not everything goes, right? So I'm sure these words are what we call neutral, parav, like they shouldn't bother anybody. You know, the way we've described discipline so far, something about being safe and healthy and functional. It sounds all good. We have the word no, as I said, which is within that, which now we can see a little bit, okay, nobody likes that word, because that's partly how we're going to get into limiting something, but because we're drawing now a line between the appropriate and the inappropriate, we're having to stop our child from having more junk food, or stop the child from fighting whatever he's doing. Though, you know, we know that the word no, in this case, will be protective and loving and good for the child. The child won't like it because he wants to keep doing what he's doing, and we're the same with that. And some people are very good at limiting themselves. They have almost an inborn nature that constrains and limits. They're self-disciplined from birth. Like they don't have trouble with this harnessing of time, space, behavior, anything. They're just like, they can limit themselves, and it makes them feel good to do so. Like a self-soothing, self-regulating infant kind of has the genetic edge, because this child can operate without overdoing his own abilities and tolerance levels, so he doesn't get overwhelmed or overexhausted, over-fatigued, and then irritable and irritated. He puts himself to sleep when he's tired. So he's, in that way, self-disciplined. He doesn't want to eat so much that his stomach hurts, so he's self-disciplined. Whereas another child without that self-regulating biology, that tendency, maybe stuffs himself, or we do that, don't we, as adults, till we're sick. I know that's something, I could use a little self-discipline, and then I eat too much sometimes, or we stay awake too long when we should go to sleep. Adults have our challenges in the area of self-discipline. But if we were self-disciplined, we too would find our lives running in a more healthy, safer, functional, and even ultimately happier way. So since it sounds like it's all for our benefit and for our children's benefit, maybe you could just write down in the chat box, why do we have such a big problem, even with the word discipline? Okay, why does it turn us off or make us afraid or make us shrink away? What's wrong with discipline after, all I've said that it is? What's the problem there? So
it looks like
yes.
there's people writing in. So afraid of being the bad guy. Kids resist it often. It's really
Like we do.
tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's often done with anger. It's hard work. Fear of not enjoying it, because the kids get very upset and make us feel like we are doing something wrong. Nothing wrong with discipline, but oftentimes I'm too tired to execute it properly. It comes out sounding negative. It feels limiting. I think it triggers challenges. Discipline is most often associated with negative interactions with our children and our parents. It restricts our freedom. I don't like fighting with my kids. It creates a power struggle. Feels like control or dictatorship. It ends up being more tiring. It takes a lot of work and consistency. Afraid of losing out. I don't want to be mean and say no and be firm when they don't know any better. We don't know how to administer it consistently and effectively. It creates confrontation. Associated with the harsher methods our parents used, which made us feel bad and shamed. The kids don't listen, a fear of the child's reaction. Kids see it as criticism. Oftentimes it's a lack of confidence on the parent's part.
Well, I'll have to stop you here because you're giving all these answers are giving away my whole class. I have to say but these are amazing. This is exactly true, exactly right, and it is material that I have also jotted down these concerns, these exact concerns that we have about discipline, and we're going to actually look at them a little slower because we've just read there a very long list, and I know there's more. These are great answers. All these things that you've said are true problems with discipline. And yet I want us to keep in mind throughout today's class that the way I started, okay, the definition of discipline and the focus on how it helps us, okay, how it helps us do better, feel better, be better, okay? And when we discipline our children, it helps them to do better and feel better and be better. Okay, to succeed. So we have to keep that somewhere in the back of our head here and move it to the front so that we can use the techniques of discipline, remembering that although the child may not like it, we are really doing something that is helpful for the child. And we don't want to be in the category of people that love themselves more than they love their child, in the sense that it's going to be unpleasant and too difficult for me to set a limit, to produce a boundary here. I'm going to save myself the time and the trouble, and I'm just going to let my kid do what he wants. Hold on for a second. Yes, I'm going to drink all the way through because I'm fighting a bit of a cold today. Now, okay, so what kind of behaviors require discipline? Let's look at some examples. We'll look at, first of all, at categories. And then again, I'm going to ask you for your examples of real things that happen in your home. So one is a behavior, a category is a behavior that needs to be stopped. Okay, it has to be curtailed. For example, when a child calls his siblings stupid. So, hold on. Excuse me. It gets really bad. I've actually brought my cough candies. I'm going to wait for that though. All right. So when a child calls names, we want that behavior to stop if we consider that that behavior will be harmful to the child in question. So it's also harmful to the victim in this case. So of course, if behavior is harmful to anybody, we're going to want it to stop. But I want you to think of the fact that allowing the child to engage in an antisocial behavior, like calling names, will be harmful to the child. If you don't stop the child, if you don't produce the limit, then the child will practice that behavior over and over again, forming a very strong neural pathway in his brain where he becomes good at name calling, for example. Okay. So you're stopping the child from engaging in a dysfunctional behavior, which will cause him pain in life. Now, we only got 2 hours, right? Hold on a second. To make it through. Excuse me. Try water also. Okay, a limit that needs to be imposed, like a bedtime. For example, a child refuses to go to bed at his bedtime, like we refuse to go to bed at our bedtime. And this is a little bit different than a behavior that needs to be curtailed. This is a behavior that a limit that needs to be imposed, where the child needs to respect a rule, okay, a condition, like a limit to the amount of cookies that the child can eat, or the amount of time that he can stay awake. There's also behaviors that actually cross a line, the sort of things that you and I won't do in front of a police officer or in a court of law. I am struggling here, but I'm hoping to make it through. Hold on. And so behaviors that cross a line in your house where you are, so to speak, the police and the court of law, you are the authority in your home. So boundary violations may require boundary setting, okay? And here's a couple of examples of boundary violations that could happen in somebody's home. You ask your child to pick up his toys or to hang up her coat or whatever, and the child walks by you and ignores you. I'm going to take a break here. I'm going to ask you to write things down only because I'm choking and I want to take a whole bunch of drinks. Okay, so I want you to write down a couple of examples of behaviors that you think need discipline. Okay, just do that for a second while I blow my nose and drink. Hold on.
So it looks like people are saying hitting, name calling, cleaning up after themselves, habitual lying, hurting their siblings, sitting at the table while you're eating. This one makes me crazy. Physical, physical threats or abuse, not listening to the parent, chutzpah, name calling and being physically aggressive, biting, listening about bedtime, yelling, hands-on with siblings, child leaves a mess and doesn't clean up after himself, especially after being asked, throwing food or things on the floor, taking a shower, ignoring a simple request, taking things without permission. When you ask a child,
lots of examples. Okay, now
yeah.
I'm going to try and talk a little bit here. Okay. So you included the examples I had of a child ignoring a request. And that is a boundary violation if you are the requester because you are the parent. And you should be able, like a classroom teacher, you should be able to make a request and expect the student to comply. You in your home are in charge. You want to feel in charge, and hopefully after today's class, you will feel a little bit more in charge. When you make a request, the child needs to actually follow it. Remember, you make requests because you love your child. It's not that you need your child to clean up the toy. You can clean up the toy yourself. It's not that hard, I'm sure. You need the child for his sake to know how to clean up toys, to know how to play and then put things away. so that that child will have what we called earlier self-discipline. At some point, the child grows up and gets married, knows how to eat and take his plate off the table, so that somebody else doesn't have to run around doing this for him. He knows how to make a mess and clean it up so that somebody else doesn't have to do it for him. And he knows how to be a good roommate in that sense so that his marriage is enhanced. When you ask your child to clean up a toy, you are giving him a life skill. When you set a limit on him, when he refuses to clean up the toy, okay, when you impose your discipline, you're helping him. Okay, so I hope you've seen how we've gone from the 4-year-old leaving a mess to the 40-year-old being divorced. Okay, like, but you know, things we practice in childhood become part of our wiring, which becomes part of our long-term personality. So every time you help your child function in a healthy, appropriate way, you're helping your child to have a good and happy, successful life in every area, at work, in marriage, in parenting, later in adulthood altogether. You're doing your child the biggest favor, and if you don't do your child this favor, your child may suffer. And again, I said because it bothered us, or it was too hard for us, or we didn't enjoy it, to give your child skills, or let's put it this way, lack of skills, and send him or her out into the world empty-handed with some basic things that they need to know. This is a way of hurting our children. We don't usually think of it that way. We think the discipline is hurting them. But of course, when we do discipline correctly, it's not going to hurt them. Okay, so like we have to learn how to do it correctly. So yeah, that was one example. But here's another example with an older kid, 25-year-old, you know, living with you, going to school perhaps, you're paying the school bill, you're providing the food, you're providing room and board, you're sending your cleaning help into this child's room to make her bed and clean the room. You're doing errands for the child, picking up things across town. You are making meals every day, maybe even providing lunches. I don't know. You know, you're still doing so much for this 25-year-old adult. Okay, one day you're in the kitchen peeling potatoes, and you don't really ask much of the child because you know that, oh my goodness, she's so busy with her schoolwork or whatever she's doing, her part-time job or her schoolwork and her part-time, whatever it is. She's so busy. Okay, so you're doing everything you can to facilitate her healthy development there by making life easy for her. But one day you're in the kitchen and it's running very late and you're trying to make dinner and you need a few more potatoes peeled, and you just call her from the living room where you see that she's sitting with her feet up on the couch reading a book, and you say, sweetheart, could you just help me in the kitchen for a few minutes? I have like 5 more potatoes that need to be peeled and it's getting so late, okay? Like whatever, you're running against a deadline. And this young lady says to you, you know, Mom, I really don't like it when you call me to do something like on short notice, like just because you see me chilling here, you know? I don't like it when you ask me to drop everything to help you out, okay? Now, you might not think of that as a boundary violation, but I would. I would think like, are we joking? This is not the same type of boundary violation as between the police officer and the civilian, in the sense that you know, the child is speaking, I'll call it semi-respectfully, because she shouldn't say anything horrible in a horrible tone of voice. She's just expressing her feelings. But the boundary violation is that there are boundaries within relationships and rules of relationships. That is, especially between grown-ups, where we have a grown-up parent and a grown-up child, we expect give and take. And if the parent here says, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to bother you, and runs back to the kitchen and peels the potatoes, then she is teaching the child that there are no boundaries, there is no rules in relationships. You can just take, and somebody else will just give. This is a very bad lesson to teach a child, because no relationship other than the parent-child relationship even looks like that, okay? And the parent-child relationship looks like that only for infants who cannot give anything, right? They're just lying there, and you have to give everything, and they take everything. But as soon as the child can carry a spoon to the table, he can begin to give. And so if we don't set a limit on that taking behavior and insist on respect for the boundaries and rules of relationships, we'll be doing serious harm to our child's future adult relationships. Okay, so we have to keep thinking, what if I accept unacceptable behavior, right? So discipline is all about appropriate behavior. And behavior matters because behavior becomes character. The things that we do over and over describe who we are. So if I take, I become a taker. Okay. If I give, I become a giver. The things I do, right? If I'm very particular about where all my papers go and I put them on the right piles and in the right drawers, if that's what I do, somebody can call me an organized person. It becomes my character. If I'm very soft spoken, they might say I'm gentle. If I speak quietly, if I like to be around people all the time and I associate with people, they might say I'm an extrovert. So these labels that we have are based on what we do. What we do is our behavior. So when we let a child insult another child or insult us or leave messes, those are the things that he does, that when he does them repeatedly, become who he is. And you might ask yourself, will anybody like him that way as an adult? Because you're going to send your child into somebody's home, to some innocent other kid, to start a life with that character that you've encouraged through the behaviors that you've allowed with limits, without limit, okay? Behaviors that you've allowed without limit. Most behaviors require limits. There's a time and place for everything. So a child who complains to you a lot will be a complainer, right? A child who helps a lot will be helpful. A child who goes to bed by himself on time will be self-disciplined. A child who shares will be generous. A behavior that occurs within its proper limits is healthy behavior that leads to healthy character traits. That's how we want to think about it. So your setting of these limits helps your child to be a healthier, and that leads to happier human being, all right? Because behaviors that work well, that are healthier, bring health to his future life and his future relationships. So we looked at some of the behaviors that you see do need limit setting, behaviors that look wrong and feel wrong in your house when they happen, abuse of other family members or disrespect. We'll use more specific examples again later, but the point is anything that is outside of its boundaries. So we use limit setting strategies for these behaviors only when those strategies are necessary. They aren't the only strategies that will teach appropriate behavior, and they are certainly not the only strategies that we will be using. If we were to use only limit setting strategies to try to teach appropriate behavior, for example, I'll finish that sentence first, then I'll give you the example. If we were to use discipline, to address a child who leaves his plates on the table, who doesn't clean up the toys, who calls his siblings names, who fights physically with his siblings, who doesn't do his homework, who doesn't go to bed on time, who doesn't get up on time, who doesn't pack his lunch properly, who spends too much money on his allowance over his budget or whatever. If we were to use discipline for all of these things, we would have a very unpleasant and dysfunctional relationship with our child, because there is a side to discipline that we'll be exploring in a couple of minutes, which is not pleasant, okay? Although discipline and limit setting is necessary, you are correct, all of you who said in the beginning, that sometimes it's not pleasant, right? So if we were using it all day long to inculcate the kind of behaviors and therefore the kind of character traits that we're hoping to see, then we'll have a very unpleasant relationship with our child, and that unpleasant relationship will undo even the education we're trying to provide. I'll go into a little bit more detail on that later. But the good news is that we can actually learn or teach our children appropriate behaviors using much more pleasant techniques, okay? Like praise, for example. So, if the child does clean up his toys and we tell him what a great job he did and how much we appreciate it, that tends to reinforce his ability to clean up. So praise would be positive feedback of all kinds, a high five, a verbal praise, a verbal remark, cash prizes on occasion, whatever anything to get the child's brain, the brain attention on the desirable behavior will always be our first strategy. All right. So when the children are cooperating, we're going to want to pay attention to that. When they are cleaning up, when they are speaking nicely, when they are going to bed, when they did have their bath, when they did brush their teeth, and when they did do their homework, we're going to want to pay attention to those successes, and that is a teaching tool in itself. The problem is that sometimes a particular behavior does not respond in a particular child to all that praise. Okay, so we're praised to the child for going to bed at 9 o'clock, but he's still popping out at 9:15 and 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock, even though we've been using the praise method. So discipline kicks in after other methods. Okay, so just to say when the unpleasant forms of discipline, okay? We could use discipline for any teaching technique, including praise. We could use that word to cover that too. We also need to be cognizant of the fact that the overuse of discipline, because it's unpleasant, can destroy your power altogether to educate your child. Because if you're too unpleasant, your child doesn't like you. And as some of you have heard me say before, if your child doesn't like you, your child doesn't want to do what you want him to do. He doesn't care to please you. And he doesn't want to learn from you. He doesn't want to be like you or do anything that's of value to you. The less the child likes you, the more that's true. So even though we're going to use techniques of discipline that might be okay and like respectful and reasonable and certainly not abusive or not horrible, discipline of the traditional kind that has its negative flavor to it cannot be used very often in the education of a child. We have to use the positive techniques, which, by the way, we will explore in detail in the upcoming weeks when I'm doing a special follow-up to this introductory session. We're doing an in-depth course on discipline over the next 6 weeks for those of you who might be interested in learning more. So we will go into depth on what the positive techniques do look like, but also the fact that the overall relationship has to feel good so that the child will benefit from those times that we have to be a little negative. The child will care because those times will stand in contrast to the usual positivity that the child feels emanating from us and with us in just being with us. Okay, so again, we'll go into this a little bit more. Now, research in the 1950s, I think it was, I forget what years, might have been 40s even, showed that parents tend to have different parenting styles, and those parenting styles are associated with different kinds of outcomes in children's adult behavior. And the research has continued 60 years later to validate the original studies, which shows that those of us who are uncomfortable with discipline of the not so good feeling kind, it's called a laissez-faire parenting, actually, that particular style, where the French word means do what you want, let it be, laissez-faire. So that kind of parent who's very warm, but very accepting and unwilling really to step up to impose limits, to get into that confrontation with a child, that produces adults who are emotionally out of control, interestingly, who feel overwhelmed, who are not so happy, and who have trouble in their behavior management and in their relationships in adulthood. So while it seems like that kind of just be warm and just be loving might be enough, the research has never shown that that is the result. It has consistently shown that it produces negative outcomes. Okay. There's also the old-fashioned authoritarian parenting, which I think we all shrink away from, even the word authoritarian, which is a very bossy style of parenting, which is very strict with a lot of punishment. I would say negative consequences is too nice a word for that kind of style. Punishment, a lot of punishment, and negative consequences. We'll talk about the differences a little bit later. And it's strict and on the colder side. We're like a army boot camp, that kind of thing with a very strict father of the olden days. I don't know. That produces neurotic children, insecure, anxious, emotionally challenged, depressed, whatever. It's not really great for mental health. Depending on how severe that parenting was, it could also produce trauma. So that parenting has never been recommended, but it was very popular in, not so long ago, actually. And then there's the authoritative parenting, which is a combination of warm, loving interventions, warm, loving parenting, and limit setting. Okay, so it does contain limit setting and some discipline, but the overall feel of the relationship is warm and loving. And guess what that produces? Okay, like I'm sure you understand, that produces the healthiest kind of adults. So, in homes where there just isn't discipline, the children tend to have chaotic and disrupted rhythms. Nobody enjoys living in such a home usually. The relationships are often challenged and unhealthy, and there's just issues with emotional regulation on everybody's part. Even though the parents are, well, they may be nice, but sometimes I'm saying warm and loving. Usually there's a lot of warmth and love there too. But the parents are overwhelmed or don't know what to do or don't know how to get the children to comply with simple requests like it's time for bed or it's time for a bath or I need you to clean your room, or just the normal things of life. They just don't know how to get the kids to comply, or the children may be openly rude and defiant to the parent, speaking, in a very disrespectful way, and the parents don't know how to stop it, or not even sure if they should stop it because maybe they think the child is expressing himself, so let him express himself. But the result is that nobody wants to live there. Okay, so we do need to set limits and boundaries, and doing so creates a safe external environment, like a safe home, and a safe internal environment where our emotions are not pouring out like a fountain that we just can't regulate, where we find ourselves, just unable to control our anger, even in public, or to control our tears, even at work or, school or whatever. Like, we want to be able to express emotion in healthy ways in appropriate times and places and so on with words, right? Unless, of course, we're 2 years old or younger, in which case we just scream and cry, and that is the expression of our emotion, okay, when we're 2, okay? But we don't want to be doing that when we're 22, 42, 62. We want to be able to become good at emotional regulation, which calms ourselves and facilitates our healthy relationships. Okay, so we're going to now look at the techniques of discipline, and we'll just start with a quick review that some of you had mentioned earlier, that we do think of discipline as having some element of unpleasant punishment, conflict, argument, fight, struggle. We think of punishers or discipliners as control freaks. There's oppression, authority in a bad sense, some sort of suffering, and unhappy children. Okay, like I think you said this, and this is what I wrote down before you said it even, it's there are notions with discipline, and you were correct also when you said the reason we have that is because of the methods that people used to use to discipline their children. So traditional methods have involved a fair amount of pain and shame, as some of you have suggested. Unskilled educators, parents and teachers from the olden days have made it painful for students to learn what they need to learn. So if a child was rude to a parent, maybe a parent would just slap the kid's face, and the child was quite young. And so the 3-year-old learns, okay, don't stick your tongue out at parents, or don't call your parents, stupid or whatever. And the kid learns that, but has learned it through abuse, really, right? A physical pain. And I say abuse because here we have a great big adult slapping a little tiny child. I mean, there's got to be another way to teach the child what she needs to know. right? And that's the other way will be called discipline. Um, Slapping the kid we call abuse now, actually. I mean, I guess it used to be called discipline. You take your belt out, and this is in the history of discipline. It used to be, even in the, when I was a child, discipline meant taking out the paddle, the belt, your hand, and teaching the kid whatever the child seemed to be missing. And that was called discipline. And a lot of children did learn, but they learned two things, right? They learned two or three things, right? They learned not to run into the road, let's say, or they learned to listen when called, or do what they were told, or to be respectful. And a lot of people of a certain age will say, oh, I would never, raise my voice to my parents. I mean, I would get slapped across the room. I would never think of doing that to this very day, even though I'm now 50 years old or 60 years old. I would never, okay? And the reason they would never, of course, is they were terrorized into not doing it. So the lesson was learned. But they may have, if that was a frequent teaching technique, learned to fear authority, to hate themselves, to have mistrust of whatever gender a parent was, responsible for that kind of technique. Poor relationships. Well, they learned a whole bunch of things, okay, at the same time. So we want our children to learn to speak respectfully without all the side effects of low self-esteem, depression, anxiety, troubled relationships, and whatever else would come from very harsh discipline techniques. There was a time when reasoning was used a lot as a discipline tool, to sit down, explain to the child, and talk to the child about why a certain behavior is unacceptable. That kind of thing doesn't work very well because of the side effect of the attention that it gives the child who's sitting down, explaining and exploring. That's one thing, is that the child gets a heavy dose of attention, which tends to reinforce whatever the misbehavior was, actually. But also, our misbehaviors don't come from the logical place in our brain. I mean, you and I know that it's not nice to take too much time in a parking space where the meter has expired. Or you and I know that driving too fast on the road is dangerous and could kill somebody, including ourselves, our passengers, and innocent people on the road. And even though we know it and our logic and our reasoning is in place, things prompt our behavior, which go beyond our logical brains. So the reasoning techniques, they're not sufficient, okay? Natural consequences is a term you might have used and heard, where we let the lesson do the teaching. The child climbs a tree and falls out and breaks his leg. Now he knows maybe he shouldn't climb a tree. If he's a slow learner, he climbs a few more times and then breaks his leg a few more times and then figures it out. Okay, that's natural consequences. There's certainly a place for natural consequences because they happen naturally. So we, as disciplinarians, don't even need to know about natural consequences because they happen without us. So I'm just going to ignore that, okay? Modern discipline looks a lot at emotional regulation as being the key to self-discipline, so that if we will support our child through the emotions that caused misbehavior, the idea is that the child would then have appropriate behavior. So if the child is yelling and thrashing and screaming, whatever, because he's disappointed, and we support the child emotionally through his disappointment, then eventually he will self-regulate and self-soothe, and he won't need to scream and yell anymore. This does help many children, and to some extent, but it does not help all children and to the complete extent that we need it to. So different kinds of children definitely need different kinds of interventions. And if emotional support is all you need to do for a particular child of yours, that is terrific, and you should do that. But if you have other children who, they've been supported, but their behavior is still completely out of control and unacceptable, you need more techniques. We need to know how to discipline. We need the certainty that discipline is a good thing and a proper thing and a right thing, a healthy thing for us to be doing. We need to see ourselves as teachers who love our children and are trying to provide the safest, healthiest education for them, right? So we want to do discipline which makes us feel like we've done good, not like we've been horrible people. So there's a lot to learn in each one of these things I'm saying, and we won't get it all today, but we're just going to zero in on a few details of this now. First of all, of course, we do have to provide a model of discipline for our children, including self-discipline, all right? So you're not going to be very successful at getting your kids to clean up when you don't clean up. You're not going to get them to go to bed when you don't go to bed. You're not going to get them to control their words when you don't control your words or your voice or whatever it is. I mean, this is just providing the model of what self-discipline, self-restraint, self-control looks like. It's a lifelong project for all of us. None of us are perfect with this stuff, but we need to get fairly decent. We need to realize that we can't expect or ask our children to do better than we're doing. Okay, so that's, I think you know that. Okay, if we're out of control, we're going to have trouble getting our children in control. So we would definitely want to help ourselves, and there's lots of different ways to do that, which we'll be exploring not today. So we have this intention to provide a good form of education, and that is cognitive. Okay, that is, I intend to be a teacher when my child is doing the wrong thing. I intend to intervene and teach the child how to produce healthy limits on his or her behavior. So this is what I want to do, but when it comes to the parenting moment, my ability to do it will be compromised. And the reason for that is because we parents are a little bit too human, right? So we have fear that starts running through our system when our child is hanging off the, ledge, or we have anger, we have upset, we have these emotions, we have outrage, we have shock, kind of interferes with our frontal cortex, okay? The child is also very emotional, and emotions are contagious. So when a particular child who is requiring discipline may be in the middle of yelling, screaming, fighting, hitting, whatever, we may be confused and overwhelmed. That's another emotion, but we don't know what to do, how to stop this. So, although we intend to provide the model of self-control and all this stuff, we may find ourselves screaming our heads off, so I better be careful with that voice. Okay. Let me give you a couple of examples. Okay. You discover, just for example, that your 21-year-old child has dropped out from college courses 4 months ago. These are courses that you're paying for after he failed his first term, which you knew nothing about, because he didn't do his assignments, which you were unaware of. And you paid thousands of dollars for the program that he's in, and he's been taking your money in addition for his rent, food, and fun wherever he's at school. And you didn't know this, but you happened to open a letter that came in the mail about your bill for something and his grades or whatever. You open this thing and you discover all this. And just at that moment, your child calls home, the phone is ringing, and there he is. Okay. So just write in the chat box, what do you think you'll feel after you've just discovered he's been lying and manipulating and deceiving you, whatever it is, and he's calling? What do you think you'll feel? Just write that in.
Anger, outrage, heated, angry, disappointed, shocked, betrayed, furious, devastated, extreme frustration, shame, betrayal, rage,
okay.
fury.
Right. Yes, okay, we won't go on, but yes, okay. Here's another example. Your 7-year-old is with you while you're visiting your in-laws. So the 7-year-old is with his grandparents, but it's a little boring there. He's not having such a good time, and he's whining to you that he wants to go home. And you tell him not yet, because you got there 5 minutes ago. Okay, so he's whining and he's whining and he's whining, and you keep telling him in a nice, controlled tone of voice, "It isn't time to go yet, sweetie. Just have your milk and cookies. We'll go soon." But he is furious with you, and right in front of your mother-in-law, he kicks you in the shins, okay, and screams at you as your mother-in-law looks on horrified. Okay, what do you feel? What do you feel right then?
Embarrassed, mortified, like I failed, completely lost, angry at my child, stressed, frustrated, helpless, self-hatred, shamed, inadequate, out of control,
Right,
judged.
okay. All right, okay. We could go on all day, but yes, okay. All right, your 9-year-old has asked for permission to sleep over at a friend's house on school night, and you've explained it's not a good idea and you don't want that to happen right now. So she starts to give you a few reasons why it needs to happen. You answer her a few more times, it's not going to happen, but she will not. She's like a dog with a bone sort of thing. She will not stop. She's following you from room to room, harassing, haranguing, asking you why not. You never let her do anything. She's just like, she will not be quiet. And you've got other things you've got to do tonight. You've got other kids you've got to put to bed. You've got work to do, whatever it is. You don't have the patience or the time for her half hour of ranting about this. What do you feel?
Really annoyed, frustrated, overwhelmed, and drained. I would explain to her why not. Fed up, frustrated, exasperated, torn, helpless.
Okay. Yes, yes. Last one of these. Okay, last one. Your 4-year-old runs away while you try to get him into the bath. Okay, so you tell him, it's bath time, but this kid is laughing and running down the hall the other way. And at first you're kind of, joking with him, and then you're playing little games with him, and you try to make little contests. You're trying everything. Then you're trying with the bribes, and then you're trying with the threats, whatever it is. But he's still like, he's not coming anywhere near you. It's getting late. You have a big report to write for work tomorrow. You're tired. It's not funny. What do you feel?
Ready to tear my hair out. Exasperated, frustrated, end of my rope, worn out, angry, powerless, impatient. I just want to give up.
Yes. Okay. So what I've said about discipline, all this, we're going to teach, we're going to educate. Could we educate at any of these moments? Do you think we're going to be in the, I'm going to model, I'm going to teach, I'm going to be kind, I'm going to do it the right way, not like the old people did it with the slap across the face. You're like, I'm not going to yell, I'm not going to be hysterical, I'm not going to be abusive, I'm going to do it right. Are we in the mode to do that? What do you think? Could we handle any of those examples?
No, 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 definitely not.
Right.
Impossible.
Right. So we're going to be taking up those examples, if you want to know how we would approach those situations, in the next 6 weeks. Okay. Now I don't mean to tease and torture you, but we don't have time to go through each one of them right now today, but we will be going through them. If you want to know in more detail what we would do, please join us. But meanwhile, let's look at some principles that will help us. The first principle is that while those things are happening, we are not going to be able to discipline. We're not going to be able to set our limit. We're not going to be able to teach because I'm sure you're familiar, or you're probably familiar with the term teaching moment, which is a moment in which both you and the child are in a normal state of consciousness, okay? That is, your fight or flight sympathetic nervous system is not activated. It's not the part of you that's running the show. Whereas we said with all of these examples, that it is your sympathetic nervous system that's running the show, because we had those feelings of rage, helplessness, panic, whatever it is, all those things that we felt, that's coming from the limbic system, the lower part of your brain. And you cannot discipline from that part, because discipline is a frontal cortex job. You need the front part of your brain. So I'm going to show you a little technique. I want you to be aware that in those examples, although they were all problematic, there was no house on fire, okay? There was no life or death emergency. Although the limbic system always acts like there is, like, wow, I've got to deal with this now, okay? Even though if I deal with it now, I will mess it up royally. I will destroy this child. I'll destroy my relationship with this child. I'll be completely ineffective as a teacher. I'll be, harming myself, and everything will go wrong. But I need to do it now. That's what your limbic system tells you. Okay, but you don't need to do it now, because nothing's really happening. If we look back at these examples, things aren't working out so well. But the house is not on fire. Okay, therefore, we need a strategy before we discipline anybody to turn off the limbic system and gain access to the frontal cortex, where our discipline techniques will be stored. And here's just one of many possible aids to that process. It's called emotional stress release, ESR. Look it up on the computer, ESR, okay? It's very simple. You get yourself away from the situation that's happening. Just step back, get yourself out of there, go to the washroom if you want, lock the door, take 2 fingers and put them on your forehead. Yeah, just about here. It's kind of halfway between your eyebrows and your top of your head, so right about there on top of your eyes. And you close your eyes and feel your rage, okay? Feel the alarm that you feel, the shock, the betrayal, the upset, the humiliation, the shame, whatever it is you feel it while you're holding these spots, okay? This is called neurovascular holding. And what it does is it actually brings the blood and the energy to the frontal cortex and removes it from the limbic system and calms your brain and steadies you so that you're able to think again, okay? Because you're going to need to think about what you want to do with this child in this situation. That requires this part of your head to be activated, okay? So instead of reacting, which is what the limbic system does, we want to respond so that we can come up with a good discipline strategy. And while we're holding these spots and we're feeling our feelings, we're taking a nice slow breath in and then letting it out really slowly. Over and over. Sometimes we can do this for 30 seconds and we'll be normal again. Sometimes we'll need 3 minutes or longer to come back to a state where we're semi-normal. We might need 5 minutes to come back. It depends what happened, how bad the whole thing was. But for normal parenting, a minute or so like this will help restore us and get us back on track, okay? Now we have to have something in the cortex so that we can draw it out, all right? But this is only so that we can access all that we know about discipline, which is very little right now. I'm aware of the clock. We don't know very many, but we do need a couple of strategies. So I'm going to, in the next couple of minutes, just run through a couple of strategies, okay? Once you're able to think, you'll be able to select what to do in a given situation. So we have 3 categories. Sometimes we're going to ignore a misbehavior, and we'll do that. There'll be a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons would be that there's some other more important misbehavior that we're going to have to attend to later today that we know is coming. So we can't deal with, we cannot use negative limit setting strategies very often. So we'll ignore this behavior for now because I'm going to be tending with one I know is going to happen a little bit later, like maybe homework is coming later or bedtime is coming later or getting up in the morning is coming later. Whatever it is, I'm not dealing with this thing now. I look away, pretend it didn't happen. That's one category, okay? Another category would be to deal with it, but in a minimal way. That is, for example, we ask the child to do something, the child doesn't do it, and then we ignore it. We ask the child to hang up her coat, she walks on by, and we don't do anything further. We hang up the coat, okay? We did address the fact that she left it there, so we are giving it something, but that's what I'll call minimal intervention. We're not following through. We don't say it a second time. If you say something a second time, you will have to follow through. We're not doing it, okay? And the third type is for a priority misbehavior, something that must be attended to. Now, if something's dangerous, okay, then we don't have to ask, do we ignore it or minimize it, whatever. It's not, if it's dangerous, we have to take care of it right now. If it's very destructive or illegal or something, we're going to have to take care of it right now, no matter what. But for things that are not in that category, we can choose to ignore it or to minimize it or to take care of it, okay? Now, if we take care of it, then we move on to selecting our discipline strategy. So there are a lot of different discipline strategies. Let's just see for a second. Okay, we have a child, just for example, who won't get up in the morning to get ready for school. And this child, will go in 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. We start off pleasant every morning, but by the 5th or 6th time, we're raging lunatic. And even then, the child is late most days, okay? So the child is behaving in a dysfunctional way, and whatever it is we're doing is certainly not helping the child become more functional. The limit we're setting or that we need to set is on sleeping, okay? At 8 o'clock, you must be up, or 7 o'clock, whatever time it is, or 6 o'clock, or, whenever the bus is leaving for you, you've got to get up. And as a parent, let's say I come in this morning, as usual, been doing this for months on end or years on end, but I hear myself screaming and I realize how ineffective and how awful my current strategy is. And I use my technique and I go like, okay, this has got to stop. Okay, it's got to stop. I've got to do something different. And the discipline strategy that I pull out is that I let the kids sleep in this morning. I call a mental health professional. I make an appointment for the entire family. And we're going to get this looked at with outside eyes. That is a discipline strategy. Why is it a discipline? Because I'm drawing the line, okay? This is not happening anymore. It's been happening for months or years on end. Done. And that's what makes it a discipline strategy. We are now going to bring in outside helpers and restructure the situation. That's a form of discipline, right? When you say enough, it's not happening anymore. That's a form of discipline. Anything that reestablishes boundaries and limits is a form of discipline. So if I refuse to accept a behavior, it's not only punishment or negative consequences that constitutes discipline. Now, a look, just giving a look can be a form of discipline. Making a request can be a form of discipline. Using specific, very targeted reinforcement techniques can be a form of discipline. Even rewards and reward charts is a form of discipline that can be used. We're going to look at all of this in depth in the next 6 weeks. But let's look at 2. Do we have just a few minutes? Are you on the line there, Jillian? Can I take a little 5 minutes here to go over a couple?
Sure.
All right. So a request. Let's look at this. So perhaps a child speaks to you in a tone that you don't appreciate. Because it's inappropriate, it's disrespectful, right? So wrong tone of voice or wrong choice of words. When the child speaks disrespectfully next time, let's say the parent has decided that what I'll do is I'll ask the child to repeat what she's saying in the right tone or with the right words or whatever. And when she does that, I will applaud her. I'll give her positive feedback for that. So that would be the discipline strategy. So in other words, I have a plan that I'm not accepting the child just to talk to me like that. The thing I'm working on is I'm not working on anything else right now. I'm just working on her disrespectful tone with me. And for this one area of her behavior, when she uses that way of speaking, I will stop her. That's the discipline part. I will ask her to do it again. That's the ask technique, okay? Make a request technique. And when she does it, I will positively reinforce her behavior, which causes a learning circuit to form in her bed. Okay, very important when we're disciplining. We don't use negative attention, lots of lectures, negative labels, insults. We don't emote with negativity, anger, and all that stuff. We're not vague, like saying things. Like for this example, let's say with the rudeness, that the child has spoken to us in a rude way. What we will not be doing is giving her a whole big lecture about how she speaks to us. We will not be telling her not to be rude, because calling her rude is in fact a negative label, and it's rude to do so. We're not describing our emotions, how hurt we feel. We're not issuing a vague request like telling her, like, you need to learn some manners. We're not being vengeful, like, you think I'm mean? I'll show you what mean is like, We're not going to become aggressive, like slam a door or walk out or act out, none of that stuff. We're not going to threaten horrible consequences. If we're going to use negative consequences, they will be well thought out, appropriate consequences. We will not ignore the fact that she's speaking like this in the case where we want this behavior to change. And we'll not keep trying different techniques, like from one time to the next in a random kind of scattered way with no program of discipline, all right? So we make a request and we tell the child, listen, I understand you're angry at me, you're upset with what I did. What I want you to do is just say, Tell me that you're upset in a normal tone of voice. Leave out the name calling. Just tell me what you're upset about. And I want you to do that again right now. I am listening. Go ahead. Okay. And when the child does that, then the parent says, thanks the child for saying that in such a polite and understandable way. And then the parent carries forward from there. Well, there's more techniques involved, but again, not today. Okay. Let's just do one last technique, which I call the almost natural consequence. Okay. Now, a natural consequence, I said, we don't need to interfere with because natural consequences happen by themselves. You climb up and you fall down. Parents don't arrange these things. They happen by themselves. Okay. But the almost natural consequence is something that the parent does create without words. Okay. So a logical consequence, just to differentiate, would be one in which the parent says something like, please put away your toy. So the child doesn't put away her toy. And the parent says, well, if you're not going to put that away, I'm going to remove it and you won't have it for 24 hours. Now, that's logical in the sense that the punishment is related to the crime. Okay, an almost natural consequence doesn't have any words like that. So, for example, the mother's making her daughter's lunch for her. Okay, the daughter's 15 or 8 or 10 or 21 or whatever it is. The daughter can make her own lunch, but the mother's being kind enough to make the lunch for the daughter, except that the daughter has not brought the lunch bag into the kitchen from her school bag, so that the lunch bag is sitting with crumbs or dirt in it, whatever, somewhere inappropriate. It needs to be in the kitchen. So the mother's folding the sandwiches, getting the snacks, and then she says to her daughter, oh, sweetheart, your lunch bag isn't here. I need to put your lunch in it. And the daughter just pretends the mother didn't speak and goes and does what she's doing. She just doesn't do it. Okay. Now the mother doesn't follow her. She doesn't yell at her. She doesn't give a bunch of negative attention. She does nothing. She leaves the different pieces of lunch on the counter because there's no lunch bag to put it in. All right. They might sit there overnight. The 15-year-old might come downstairs and find that the sandwich is melted cream cheese, whatever, is sitting on the counter. Mother's finished making lunch. There's no more. The lunch is not in a lunch bag because the daughter didn't put there. The mother did that on purpose to set the limit. I asked you to do something, you don't do it. We're finished here. Okay. Similarly, let's see, a child's supposed to put clothes in the laundry hamper for washing, but leaves them on the floor instead. The mother leaves them on the floor and doesn't say anything. Okay, there's no speeches in the almost natural consequence. Okay, the clothes weren't in the laundry basket, so they didn't get washed, right? The last one, child asks mom for help last minute. Hold on. I'm so glad I made it this far. Hold on. Mom is going out for the evening, doesn't have time to help the kid with her last minute project, doesn't do it. It doesn't happen. That's the almost natural consequence. Mom does not curtail her evening, does not come home early, does not stay up all night to do it for the child, does not speak to her child about it. Just, it didn't happen. That's it. The almost natural consequence. Do you like that one? I kind of like that one. All right, obviously, there is so much more to know. And if you're interested in knowing a wider range of very effective interventions that don't involve any emotional abuse or physical abuse or harsh parenting, then I hope that you'll join me for the upcoming 6-week course. And if you're interested in that, just write your name in the chat box and Jillian will follow up with you. Your name or your email or something. And Jillian, do you want to explain a little bit more about that course that's coming up for all of those who are interested?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I see so many people coming back and writing their names and that they're interested. So while I have you all here right now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you exactly what is involved with the next 6 weeks, what we're going to learn, and how you can join today at that special discounted rate that I mentioned earlier on. To everyone who is already part of Sarah Chana's Family Circle community, this will be part of your community membership. So if you'd like to stay on, you can still listen to hear what's about to come up in the next 6 weeks of your classes. And of course, I would love to, if you'd like to come back and let me know, if you'd like to just get on the line, we can open up your microphone and tell us how you've been enjoying the classes as well. I'd love to open up some of those. So just come on back and let me know if you're part of the community and you'd like to tell us all about your experience so far. In the meantime, let me go ahead and tell you exactly what's going to happen over the next 6 weeks. So starting next week, we are going to be talking about defining our terms, discover how to best understand when and how to discipline, and how discipline is used by recognizing types of misbehavior, inappropriate behavior, and behavior problems, and in turn, distinguishing between negative consequences, discipline, and punishment. Then, reward system, rewards, and discipline. Learn what a target behavior is and what we can do as parents to encourage target behaviors. Plus, find out when to use positive reinforcement versus discipline to ensure your desired outcome. Following that is the process of discipline. What role do emotions play in your ability to discipline? How does a parent's anger or child's anger affect the process? Create a successful structure of discipline with all of these factors in mind. Followed by discipline tools. Get a toolbox of skills to appropriately discipline toddlers, children 4 to 10, children over 10, and adult children. In week 5, we're going to be looking at emotional and relational elements of discipline. Uncover how these factors play a role. Marriage and the discipline process, parents' helplessness, fear, and overwhelm, and when discipline can make matters worse or when professional help is needed. And then finally, in week 6, will be a full hour Q&A to gain solutions to your personal questions through a live Q&A and implementation session. Each of the ongoing classes will be live and interactive, just like today's class was. So you'll be able to write in your questions and your answers when Sarah Chana is asking you questions. So it really allows you to get your biggest questions answered and stay completely anonymous if you choose. They will all take place on Thursdays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Israel time. And as I mentioned, our very first class starts next week, Thursday, May 23rd. But don't worry if you can't attend a live class, a recording will always be available to you in your own personal membership area just 24 hours after the live class takes place, and that will be available to you for a lifetime to listen to or download at your convenience. So if you find, I actually was just talking to a friend of mine who said, the middle of the day is not so great for me, but if I could listen to a recording while I'm folding laundry at night, that would be the best for me. And that is what we've done. We've tried to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to listen to these classes at your convenience. So you can download it onto your computer. You can also download it right onto your phone or an iPad. If you find that you like to listen to things on the go, on the treadmill, while you're doing carpool, wherever it is that you've got the time and you've got the space and energy, we will make it available for you. Plus, in addition to these 6 weeks, you'll also have the opportunity to get the full series on Master Your Moods. Release yourself from feelings of irritability, sadness, and negativity by identifying the source of your low moods or those of your child's, and use Sarah Chana's practical tools to help you maintain emotional balance and regain your ability to cope with life's challenges. Plus, you'll also get the full series on living your best marriage. Develop a healthier, happier, more fulfilling relationship by creating a clear path towards conflict resolution and true connection through harmony, understanding, and peace. And you'll also get a series on communicating your grievances. Confronting our loved ones with requests for change is never easy, but often necessary for true love, acceptance, and growth. Discover how to use positive reinforcement and patience during the rewiring process and how to enable our loved ones to have a better understanding of how their behaviors impact our emotions and reactions. As you can see, Sarah Chana will be walking you through various aspects of parenting and emotional well-being to ensure that you and your family are set to thrive. You'll have one-on-one support throughout this program and will have the unique opportunity to get your personal questions answered that you haven't been able to get answered before. Most importantly, by investing in yourself and your family now, you'll discover the techniques and tools to reduce conflict in your home and motivate your kids to listen without ulcer-causing, blood pressure-raising panic and yelling. You'll be able to bring out the best in you and your child by overcoming personal limitations and developing increasing levels of competence, wisdom, and emotional power. Gain cooperation, trust, and respect by quickly diffusing even the most difficult parenting situations through understanding acceptance and realistic expectations. Use effective discipline and remove the anger in order to avoid severe damage to the parent-child relationship and loss of parental control. Curb stress-inducing behaviors like tantrums and meltdowns, talking back, and sibling rivalry, while staying calm, in control, and feeling confident in your parenting skills. And finally, adopt the less stress approach to parenting and finally put an end to the exhausting, frustrating, and draining methods that just don't work. An opportunity like this rarely comes along, but we listen to all of our members' requests, and together with a one-of-a-kind mentor, Chana, we are offering the guidance you need and deserve for a highly reduced rate. Plus, to make it accessible to everyone, we are also offering payment plan options when you register. So today, you can join the basic membership with the full 6-week series for just $297, or you can get the full platinum package for only $397, which includes the full 6-week course on discipline, plus the bonus packages of mastering your moods, living your best marriage, and communicating your differences. For the next 24 hours only, you get these special discounted prices, which saves you an additional $100. So instead of $397 for your basic membership, you're only paying $297. And for the platinum package, instead of $497, you're only paying $397. And as I mentioned, you will have payment plan options available to you when you click to register. So let me get the link to you right in your chat box now. Excuse me, it's www.jewishworkshops.com/discipline. And I will put that up on your screen as well. But if you're listening over by phone, then it's www.jewishworkshops.com/discipline. And when you go ahead and click to register, you will be redirected to the sign-up page, and there again you will find payment plan options available that will best fit your needs, so that if you don't want to pay the full price all at once, you will have the ability to pay monthly. If you're having any problems or you need help registering, please just come on back and put your name and your telephone number right into the chat box now. I have Hannah and Ella, and Adina will be joining us later. We're all ready to go ahead and give you a call to help you register. I don't want you to miss out on this opportunity. Excuse me.
It's catchy. I know how she feels. It's awesome.
Sorry.
yeah, Julian.
Okay. And once you're registered, also please just come on back and let me know that you're in. I can already see Chana. Welcome. Chana's in, and she is from Canada, and it's wonderful to have you here. Excuse me. Let me get to a quick question here before I continue. Sarah Chana, we had a wonderful question come in while you were talking. And it said, once you learn the right ways to discipline, how and when do you transition from bad to good habits?
You'll do it immediately. And you can actually explain to children that you did learn something. Okay, in other words, you could say like, well, I've taken a course and I've learned a better way. I'm tired of yelling at you guys, and I don't want to do that. I now know that we can we can all do better around here. So I'm giving you the opportunity to do ABC, for example, and then you're applying the discipline strategy, whatever it is that you're using. But I do think that explaining to the kids that you took this seriously, you were looking into it, you didn't like what was happening in the house with their behavior and your own behavior, and you wanted to improve it. I think that's such a great model to give to kids that, hey, nobody is perfect. Grown-ups keep learning throughout the lifetime, and learning is a good thing, and we get better and better as we go. Like, all of that comes along, that message is inculcated when you say to your child, well, I didn't like what was happening, I decided to do something about it. That's so growth oriented. So I think that's how we do it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Sorry, we did have another question come in, and then I will get to, there are so many questions about the course, so I will get to those as well.
Okay.
But just to clarify, you had mentioned before about changing or focusing on one behavior at a time. If you have several behaviors that you want to change, like staying in bed at bedtime or the screaming at siblings, do we only focus on disciplining one behavior at a time each time, or in a period of time?
When you're using effective discipline, you'll actually make progress in a short period of time. Like, when we use ineffective discipline, then we're trying to get our kid into bed on time for 5 years straight or something. We're not getting anywhere with it. When you're using an effective discipline strategy, within a couple of weeks, your issue should be resolved and you can go on to your next priority issue. But in terms of using discipline for any issues, discipline techniques that are positive can be used for all issues at all times, okay? The ones that feel good. But discipline techniques that have an unpleasant feel to them that we do have to sometimes use, those must be limited to the priority issue or two that we are working on. That's why I said that we will ignore or minimize things that don't fit the priority list for now, unless there's some sort of emergency. So if the child is doing something dangerous, then we'll have to intervene, even if it's not on the priority list. But for regular misbehaviors, we won't give them the full package of our intervention, certainly not a negative feeling discipline strategy, other than one or two perhaps behaviors during the course of a day. The rest of the day, we're going to be using other techniques to help the child move along and make progress in weak areas, in areas that the child needs to make changes in. But we're going to use different techniques, which I also call discipline, but I'll call them for now good feeling discipline techniques, okay? And those we can use as much as we want on everything all at once, okay? You'll see in the course how it unfolds.
Great. Thank you so much. I do just want to remind everybody, once you're in and you've already secured your spot, please come on back and just write your first name and the words "I'm in" so I can welcome you to the community. And in answer to your question, what are the times and dates of the sessions? So all of the sessions are going to take place on Thursdays at 12 p.m. Eastern. And Ronnie, in answer to your question, Israel is 7 p.m. Israel time. But again, if you can't make it to one of the live classes, then you will have a recorded session available to you if the classes are all on Thursdays, you'll have your recording every Sunday, and you can listen to those classes at your convenience whenever the time fits for you. If you have questions that you want answered, then you'll just go ahead and send those questions in, and we'll make sure that Sarahana addresses those either in the very next class or in the live Q&A at the very end. But you will get your questions answered whether you're able to come on to the live class or you need to hold off and listen to the recordings. Let me see, there were some other questions here as well. Welcome, April, you're in. That's wonderful. So great to have you as well. Lauren, welcome. You're in too. That is great. Okay, let me just make sure that I get back to these bonuses. I'm sorry if I went through them a little quickly, but people are asking as well. So as part of the Platinum package, which you're only paying $397 for today, you get the full 6-week course on discipline, plus a full series, which is pre-recorded to listen to at your convenience on mastering your moods. which really delves into identifying the source of your moods and the low moods of your children. So that could be anything from sadness or anxiety, just a low feeling. And you'll be able to understand where that comes from and help you and your children balance that emotional tendencies to help cope with life's challenges. Plus, Living Your Best Marriage, which is a full 6-part series to help also better understand you and your spouse. Because oftentimes when it comes to discipline, I've seen a number of questions come in, how to deal with disciplining your children, or even family life in general when you and your spouse aren't always on the same page. So this full series will help you understand you and your spouse in a better way and hopefully help you get back onto that same page. And then finally, Communicating Your Differences, which is a 3-part series. As I mentioned, all of the bonus classes are pre-recorded sessions, which you'll find in your membership area to listen to at your convenience. So here you are one more time. The basic package, if you choose to get the 6 weeks of the Discipline series, is just $297 for the next 24 hours, or you can become a Platinum member for $397 and get the full 6-week course plus all of those additional bonuses. If you are having any trouble registering, please, like I said, come on back and just put your name and your telephone number right into the chat box. We have our team standing by, and I want to make sure that you still get in at this special discounted rate. I don't want you to miss any of your opportunities. So come on back and let us know, and we will get you registered over the phone. Chana, we do have additional questions coming in, and please, I urge anyone who's still here on the line with us. Again, as I mentioned, there were hundreds who joined today, and thank you so much for that. If you have any questions regarding the course itself or any questions for Chana, please come on back and let us know, and we'll try to get to as many as possible. Let me go ahead and get to some of these questions that came in a little bit earlier. I find myself using a lot of empty threats. If you do XYZ, then we're not going to the basketball game today. Or if you do this, then you don't get any treats after dinner. But oftentimes I never follow through with those. What can I do to help be more consistent?
I think that when you know your strategy beforehand, in other words, it's not just something you're coming up with right now because the child is misbehaving. It's something that when the child misbehaves, you make a note of what's happening. For example, the child ignores my request, or when I drop my child off at somebody's house, when I come to pick that child up, he doesn't cooperate getting his coat and boots and whatever it isn't coming. He doesn't, when you notice there's a pattern of negative behavior that needs an intervention, instead of just trying to intervene in that moment, go home and think about what the intervention is going to be using one of the carefully developed discipline strategies, so that it's not going to be an empty threat. Okay, you're actually going to have a plan, and it'll be step 1, step 2, step 3 kind of thing in that plan. And we will be designing that kind of thing in the course so that, it becomes much more conscious. I think these empty threats happen when we want the child to do something right now, and we're just kind of grasping for straws. Like we're just desperately, just pulling something out of our hat. I need you to cooperate right now. Now, if you are desperately trying to get something because you need the child to come right now, and you haven't had a chance to develop your plan, it's just that there's a carpool waiting, or the kid has to come right now, and you don't have your plan yet. Okay, so you will make a mental note, to develop a plan, but right now you can use one of your desperate strategies, okay, where you're not even expecting yourself to carry through, right? Like if that won't happen very often once you get going, because there's only so many predictable misbehaviors that kids do. They don't, so, you will actually eventually have a plan for everything that's really going wrong. But at first, if you don't have your plan in, so you'll say something like, if you don't come, then there won't be dessert when for dinner tonight, for example, let's say. And then your question to yourself was, okay, but I'm not going to carry through with that. Honestly, it won't matter for one night, providing you make this plan so that your carry through will happen going forward from that day. So one way around it is to, take the class and learn how to make the plans, and that will help you stick through it. And now another way is like when you said no dessert tonight, you have to ask yourself, well, why aren't I carrying through? And I'm imagining it's all those things we said in the class, that the child's going to cry, it's going to be a scene, it's going to be distressing for everybody, it's going to be hard on your nerves, and you can't be bothered. So you just don't want to start up. It's just like, it's nice at home finally, let's not do this thing. But we do have to realize that that little discombobulation, unpleasant as it is an investment in many more quiet nights. Okay, we will go into this more, but you have to keep that consciously in mind. It may be unpleasant tonight, but sticking with it allows it to be pleasant for the next 10 years. So again, when we've got our plan, we can do it better. All right.
That's great. Thank you so much. We have so many more questions coming in, so let me start getting to a few more. My 4-year-old son doesn't understand why I am the boss. He doesn't understand why I get to be in control, and if I ask him to do something, why he has to do it and I don't have to do it. How do I explain and show him? I'm trying to guide and teach him, but this is not a power struggle.
Well, it is a power struggle because he's struggling with your power, but so it's okay. What he has difficulty with is accepting that he's not in charge. It's just in his personality. Like some kids will find it easy to submit to adult authority. So if mommy or daddy says something, they go, oh, okay, they just march off and do it without questioning, what gives you the right to tell me, And then there's other kids just in their personality. It's good. Like they really have that question, like, who are you? Like, we are equal creatures on this earth. I could decide myself. Now, you need to know the answer. And the answer is that you are the parent in charge of the child's well-being. Okay, you are responsible for the safety and health, well-being and development of this human being. You are in charge. So it's your call to make all decisions relating to food and care and activities and everything. It is your call. So if the child wants to know, like, why do I have to listen to you? You would say, because a child is given to a parent, for the parent to raise and guide and teach and protect, and the parent is in charge of the child's development until the child is old enough to make a living, pay for his own house, cook his own food, live his own life in a different house, not here, on his own, and maybe take care of his family. And at that point, the child is now in charge of himself. Till then, it is the parent's responsibility to provide everything for the child, not just provide everything, but to guide the child into how to be a grown-up. Okay, so that is the answer. You just need to be comfortable with it. I mean, we can get spiritual about it too, that this is God gives you a parent a child to raise, and it's not up to the parent exactly what we do. The parent looks to God for guidance on how to raise the child or whatever. You can do it in your own way, whatever makes sense, but do highlight the fact that you're comfortable with the fact that you are in charge, and that democracy is not exactly what's going on there. Equality is what's going on. You are equal to your child in value, and you can explain that to the child too. We're both equal in our preciousness, in our value, but we have different roles in this household. Okay, like I'm the one who is in charge of this house. Okay, and you will be in charge of your house when you are a grown-up, and the things that go on and the way your child is raised. I just think your comfort with it will get through to the child somehow eventually. Like it's he'll see that you're okay with that, so he'll be better with it, I think. But the strong-willed child just doesn't like anybody telling him what to do, so it's just part of his nature. Don't worry about it. Just carry on.
Great, thank you. I'd like to go ahead and welcome some of our brand new members. Welcome Rachel and Esther. Welcome Jonathan. Welcome Leah. And welcome, Michael. It's so wonderful to have all of you. Please, I really urge you to come on back once you're registered and just let me know with your first name or your initials and the words "I'm in" so that I can welcome you. And as I mentioned earlier, if there's anyone still on the line from Sarah Chana's Family Circle, please come on back and let me know. I would love to open up your microphone and hear about your experiences so far and how much you've learned already with Sarah Chana. Oh, welcome, Chaya Sarah. Great to have you as well. Welcome, Tammy. Welcome, Orlia. That's a beautiful name. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And again, if you're having any trouble registering or if you just have other questions, need help with anything, please come on back, put your name and telephone number in. Once we close up the webinar, which will be shortly, I won't be able to get any of your information. So just come on back with your name and telephone number if you need some help, and we're happy to do that for you. And again, once you're in, just come on back and let me know with the words with your first name and the words I'm in. And welcome, Rifki. Great to have you too. Okay, Sarah Chana, we have some additional questions. Let's see where we go here. We had some questions about being on the same page as your spouse when dealing with discipline. It seems my husband is more authoritarian and I'm more authoritative, but my kids listen to my husband, and that just ends up leaving me feeling powerless and gives him an excuse to challenge my way of parenting.
It makes sense that the kids might listen to your husband because perhaps they're more fearful. I don't know what he's doing exactly, but yes. Now, so I understand what he's saying is that your techniques are ineffective. It could be that your techniques are ineffective, but there's a lot of other dynamics that go on. Like sometimes when a child feels less fearful and more secure, they take a little bit of liberties and they push those boundaries that we're talking about. You may want to be careful that your children respect your boundaries, because I find that in authoritative parenting, you can be warm, fuzzy, really, really loving, but also exceptionally clear on where you stand with boundaries. And it might be that you're accepting something there that maybe you shouldn't accept, I'm not sure, because the authoritative parent would normally get a lot of cooperation. So we'll review in more detail what it really means, and maybe there's some little gaps in what you're doing where you feel you have some rules or enough rules or something, but there might be a little something you're missing there. Because in a very warm relationship, there, like you can get so much cooperation just that's coming out of love, not out of fear. And that's really the ideal. That's what we'd like to strive towards. So I would just double check it. If you're going to be with the course with us, you'll see it in more detail, and maybe you'll find those gaps yourself. And of course, this is no reason for you to become an authoritarian parent, which I'm sure you're not going to be anytime soon, because there's more to the relationship than just whether the child cooperates or is well behaved around a person. You actually want a warm and loving and lifelong relationship with your child, which you often lose in the course of authoritarian parenting. Not always, but it's pretty risky. You take a very big risk that, yeah, you'll get your kid to take his plate off the table, but he doesn't want to come visit you when he's 25 or 35 or whatever it is. He doesn't talk to you much when he's 45 or, so there's a cost that perhaps, but don't want to, I hope it doesn't happen, in your husband's case, but it's risky. Okay. So just stick with what you know to be right and true and keep going and just look for, perhaps there's something a little bit that you're missing that we can tighten the screws a little. Okay. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much. That was great. Welcome, Alana. It's great to have you. Welcome, Chaya. Nathan, welcome. Shifra, Sarah, and Chaya. Welcome to all of you. It is really great to continue to see people joining the community. We love having all of these new names and faces that we'll get to know over the next 6 weeks. So welcome to all. Please, if you've registered and I haven't been able to welcome you, come on back and let me know. I would certainly love to be able to go ahead and do that. In the meantime, Sarah Chana, I do have a question. What is, I guess, the best way to explain the difference between joining a community like this and gaining the perspective through these classes alongside other parents going through similar situations, and picking up a book or learning different methods through that. How is this really standing apart, and why is it so important for people to have that kind of support during this process?
I mean, I'm an author of a number of books on parenting, and I put general principles into a book which are helpful, and you can refer to them later. But it really is nothing. A book is not a course, okay? And that interaction, the fact that we can talk and you can ask, and there's examples that are not on, if I come up with 2 examples in a book, but there's zillions of examples in real life, and also your own particular situation that's happening is always going to be unique. So we wanted to speak to what's really going on in your home. When we take a course like this, it's not really nothing like reading a book, although a book is very helpful, and I hope you'll buy my books, but it's not at all the same, because when I'm writing, I know as a writer, okay, you say something, but it's the questions that somebody asks that allows you to go, oh yes, you should add this and to add that and to add the wealth of knowledge. I've been helping parents for 40 years, and there's much more that I can say when we're talking than what I wrote down on page 122 there, whatever it was. Like, that was what I was thinking in that moment, but there's so much more to say, and it's not on page 123. It's like, there's a world of information that is in here and that is between us and that comes out in a live course. So yeah, they're both great, but they're definitely different. There's just it's such an opportunity and privilege for me to be able to actually share what I've learned with working with thousands and thousands and thousands of parents over these decades when I'm talking to you. So yeah, it's different.
That's great.
Richer.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that too.
Yeah.
We are going to be closing up in just a little bit, so I want to make sure I do get to a few more questions. And in the meantime, I also want to go ahead and welcome Adina. Welcome to you. I also want to go ahead and make sure to, again, answer the live classes take place on Thursdays. So again, I may have just gone through this information a little quickly, so I apologize for that. But all of the live classes take place on Thursdays. We are starting next week, May 23rd. So make sure to put that onto your calendar. But of course, the classes are at 12 p.m. Eastern time. So New York, Toronto, anything on the East Coast of the United States, and 7 p.m. Israel time. If you can't make it to a live class, or you can make it to some of the live classes and others you can't, please don't worry about that. We do have the recorded sessions will be available to you every Sunday following that Thursday class. And then at that point, you can listen to it, download it at your convenience. Even people who attend the live classes, I know oftentimes come back and re-listen to it and take notes and hear something that they may not have heard the first time. It's always wonderful to have this library of classes available to you at your fingertips, and that's exactly what will happen. You'll have these available to you for a lifetime to just listen to or re-listen to at your convenience. Sarhana, we also had another question come in. It says, my children have no structure. We don't really have a routine. They basically aren't trained at all. The biggest child I feel like sometimes is myself because I hate having to prepare and meet deadlines. How can I transform myself and create a functional household at the same time? Is it too late?
It's never too late. Okay. Any little thing we learn, can help us. I think you raise a good point that our own challenges with organization, limits, deadlines, or whatever will inevitably spill over into our children. But it kind of answers the question, how do I do it at the same time? Start with you, right? So as you become more experienced at setting a small limit for yourself and really strengthening that muscle inside of you for saying no, okay, like now I'm finished, one hour on my device, let's say, and then I'm finished, or whatever, as you learn the techniques for strengthening the muscles that in the course, actually, we can apply them all to ourselves. So we could discipline our children, but we can also discipline ourselves using the same techniques, because we have multiple selves, So we have one that kind of wants to break through the limits. Oh, I know I really should go to bed, but I think I'll stay up 3 more hours, So that the part of me, the naughty child within inside that doesn't want to respect my bedtime, let's say. And then I have an adult inside also that says like, well, you know how you're going to feel tomorrow. And you know how you felt yesterday, and this is this really working for you. Your eyes are going to be blurry and whatever. So the adult and the inner child have a relationship that can be improved with discipline. Okay, but this adult inside us doesn't necessarily know how to carry out discipline. So that person, that adult inside us, is failing to do it for both us and for our biological children who are living outside of us. Okay, so once we teach this adult the skills of discipline, she can apply it inside and outside simultaneously. All right, it'll be fine. Study up, join us, and you'll make the improvements. Whether you apply them to yourself or to your children, you're going to see improvements, and you can do it to both.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Stella. Great to have you, and welcome, Sarah. Looks like you've just joined as well. Great to see everybody coming and joining our community. Sarah Chana, I did have a question that came in, and now I hope I can still find it. Okay, I'm going to be looking for it. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes. A lot of questions actually came in similar about screen time and electronic devices and how to discipline allowing children. On the one hand, it kind of takes them off of the parent's hand for a while and gives the parents time to, take care of whatever it is that needs to be taken care of. And at the same time, nobody wants their child to be sitting in front of a television, a computer, or a phone, an iPad for hours and hours at a time. How can you find that balance? And at one point when I need to do the dishes, it's okay for them to watch, but when I don't want them to be doing that, then now I'm telling them it's not okay for them to watch it. How do I balance that, I guess, is what I'm trying to
yeah, I think you're saying
together.
that sometimes it works for me, and sometimes
Correct.
Yeah. But when we're engaged in true discipline, we're actually thinking about our goals in advance. Again, instead of shooting from the hip and just doing whatever feels good in the moment, we have a plan and we know what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we will include in that plan that it does work for me to have you busy on your screens or whatever while I'm making dinner. That does work, okay? And that's okay. But I'm going to include that hour when I calculate how many hours I think is good for you on that device. And if I've decided that, well, 2 hours a night is how much device time I think is good for you, then I'll say you can have your first hour between 5:30 and 6:30 when I'm making dinner, and then you can have your second hour between 8:30 and 9:30 after you finished your homework. Okay, but I can say no at any point if I thought it was an hour or 5 minutes or 2 minutes or none at all, whatever it is I think is good for you, because in my job as parent, I am setting the limits that I believe will help you in your life. So if I think that you sitting on that device for 4 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours a night is bad for you and will hurt you in your life, then I have to be willing to step up to the plate and intervene, which is not always easy, but we're going to make it as easy as possible using the techniques that we can use to make it as easy as possible. So we're going to try, but if I'm thinking, oh, it's just too hard for me, it's just too annoying, it's just go ahead, watch your stupid thing, for 8 hours a night, I don't care, okay, because it's just too annoying for me to set this limit. Then we see again the underlying self-centeredness of that, because we're saying it's too hard for me, it's too much trouble for me to help you become the person I think you need to be and the person that will have the best life. It's too much trouble. So go have a horrible life, I mean, it's like when we say it like that, I don't think we've ever really thought of it like that. We don't mean to neglect our children, but our refusal to discipline can actually be a form of neglect. So have to be careful, and we'll encourage ourselves as we're going through the 6-week course to have kind eyes on our disciplining activities, okay, to see them for what they are.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get ready to wrap up here. If anyone has any additional questions, please come on back and let us know with your name and telephone number so that we can help you register. As I mentioned, just 1 week from today, we start our first class in this series. So make sure to get in. I know that there were a few people on the line that were looking to see if there was going to be a recording of today's session to share with spouses. Yes, God willing, we will do our very best to get out a recording so that your spouse can listen to it as well. And again, hopefully you can join as either a couple or as by yourself. Even one parent on the line is a huge step forward in the right direction for you and your family. It will be extremely helpful, of course, but in your membership, you can certainly listen to it alongside your spouse. Of course, we ask that you don't share any of the information with anyone else. You're paying for one membership, and that would just include you and the person in your household alongside you, if that is the case. Sarahana, with just a couple minutes left here, if you don't mind just, I guess, leaving us with some closing remarks too. There's still, thank God, several hundred people here on the line with us. If anybody has any, lingering questions in their mind, whether this is the right step for them and their family, if you can just help close us off here today.
I said at the beginning that discipline is one of my favorite subjects, and I said, I know it sounds a little bit odd, but I want to close with this thought that discipline protects us, okay? It protects our relationships, and it protects our loved ones in that we don't accept behavior in the house that will cause harm and stress to us, ourselves. We don't allow our loved ones to become people that nobody would like, including us. We take good care of our relationships. We step up to the plate. We do this hard thing of setting a limit in a kind way, okay? Like we have to, it is a hard task, and it requires skill and study. I don't think that they don't teach it in school, and we watch our parents and we pick up a couple of strategies from them. And if we're totally happy with what we know from our parents and it is totally working for us in our home, then we don't need to learn anything. But I think that for most of us, the models we receive are maybe imperfect because we're all imperfect. And there's always room for growth in such an important area, okay? So in this area because here is where we get mad, okay? When people are crossing lines and extending their boundaries, this is where we fall into the trap. We've talked about all these emotions. I just named a couple of typical scenarios that happen in a house, right? And here we are, we said the words where we're enraged, we're outraged, we're upset, we're shocked, we're betrayed, we're panicked, all those things. Those are normal feelings for us to feel. But when we parent through those feelings, we can do a lot of damage. So we want to be able to feel our real feelings and then parent in a way that will keep all of us safe and loving and together. That's why discipline is one of my favorite subjects, because that boundary setting is what does it for us, and we need the skill to do it well. So I do invite all of you to join me, and let's just take one more step forward along this very important path to happiness, okay, and well-being.
Thank you so much, Sarahana, and welcome, Michelle. She says, Sarahana, I'm your biggest fan. So that's so nice to hear. Welcome to all of our new members. I hope to be welcoming many more people over the next few days and definitely over the next 24 hours so that you can continue to get that special discounted rate that we're offering for you right now. Thank you, Sarahana, for spending your time with us today. Thank you to everyone from all over the world. We saw such an amazing amount of parents come here from literally several different countries, certainly all across the United States and Canada, and we saw Israel, and it was just really wonderful to see so many people spending their time here learning and growing and investing in themselves and in their families. And that is something that, you know, we obviously strive for here at Jewish Workshops, and it's really, really a blessing to see all of you join us. So thank you so much. If you have any additional questions, I'm going to go ahead and leave the webinar open for just a couple more minutes. You won't hear anything, you won't see anything. You'll just be able to still put your name and telephone number right into this chat box if you have questions or need help registering. So I'll leave that open for you. And of course, you can always reach us at jewishworkshops@jewishworkshops.com. If you have additional questions, as I mentioned, we will do our very best to get a recording out to you for you to listen to the intro again. And with that, I say thank you and wish everybody a great day or good night, depending on where you are, and look forward to joining as many people as possible next Thursday, May 23rd, on our very first class. So thank you so much.
Look forward to seeing you there. Yeah.
Thank you. Have a good one.